All right, so we're here again in part five, and part five is about work plan, budget, and sub granting. Um, whenever you are creating work plan is driven by your activities. Work plan simply means how the practical process you want to follow in your implementation. So, and the implementation involves activity. You are done with all your grammar about objectives and output. Now, in the implementation, you are focusing on the activities that will lead to those changes. So, and your work plan will deal with these activities, the time that they are to be implemented, who is responsible for what. This is just what your work plan is about, right? And now, activities are also the things, is only activities that you assign cost to, because while implementing your project, you will spend money. That grant you requested, that has been paid to your account, that is when you start spending them. You don't spend them when activities are not being carried out. And so that is the reason why activities and budget are twins, because it is that activity that you've already listed out that you assign cost to. Do you see how activity, timeline, budget, activity, work plan, budget, how they are related? All work plan and budget, they are all neighbors to activities, right? Yeah, so your work plan should outline the activities and who is responsible for what and the timeline. And one thing I would recommend is that you should structure your activities in phases. What I mean is that there should be activity clusters. For example, you could have activity 1, activity 2, activity 3 clustered together to achieve one specific objective. Because maybe you have 3 objectives that you've listed. 3 activity can be helping one objective. Another set of 3 or 4 activity can be helping another objective. Another set of activity will be helping another objective. So you see that activities are now grouped in clusters according to the objective that they are supporting, right? So, and if they are done that way, it will also be possible for you to arrange this activity in phases. To say phase 1 of the activity is dealing with this objective, and these are the list of activities under phase 1. I don't know if you are making sense here. So, and if you decide to arrange your activities in phases, make sure that the phases of this activity implementation aligns with GAVI's cycle of 21 months. So it means that some activity cluster may not have that luxury of time, depending on the volume of work involved in implementing those activities. So some might be tight, some might not be tight. You understand? Good enough that you are not conducting any baseline here, because baseline study usually takes a longer time, which if you have a short period of time, it's not something that you can easily conclude in 1 month or so, right? Yeah, but the point here is that make sure that the phases of your activities match with the timeline that GAVI has set, which is 21 months. So you know how to plan them. The activity that will take you more time should be assigned to a longer period of time within that 21 months. It could also be that your activity may not even, your entire project may not even need 21 months. So depending on the activity you are implementing, some might need only 18 months, some might need only 12 months to complete the activity. So it depends on the volume of activities that you actually want to implement. But whatever you are doing, be realistic. It's better to plan fewer activities that you are sure you can deliver effectively and well, instead of having a list of 20 activities and you struggle to implement them. There's no rule that say you must include activities that touches on all the priorities. If you can focus on just one priority, maybe just targeting zero dose and or under-immunized children, you can focus on just one. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to focus on all the 4 priorities, because the more priorities you focus on, the more activities you need and the more time you need to implement them, right? So now, once you have all your activities listed out, it is on that basis that you start designing your budget. Yes, so like I've said earlier, budgets are costs relating to activities. You don't tie your budget to any other thing except activities, because it is during activity that you actually spend money. So those activities you listed out must be assigned cost. And in fact, for budget purpose, each activity might also have sub-activities or tasks to help define each cost well. For example, if you simply say, if one of your activity is training of healthcare workers, for example, you can't just assign a lump sum to training. If you want to actually determine the cost of training healthcare workers, there are budget items. You understand? Logistics involved, and begin to list out each of the logistics involved for the training, which will now lead you to breaking down the main activity into smaller tasks, that so that your budget can be clearer, right? Yeah, but in all, one thing that is important here is that for GAVI budget has 2 components. For this proposal, the budget has 2 components. The first component of the budget is activity cost or program cost. So this cost relates to everything related to implementation. You can call it direct cost. Everything related to field implementation is under activity cost or programmatic cost. Then the second component of the budget under GAVI is operational cost. So these things are not directly related to field implementation, but they are operational cost or overheads. Do you understand? For example, you can link a particular cost to training of your health workers, right? So it goes directly to that component of the implementation. But when you are paying your staff, your project staff, that cost is not linked to only one activity, because that staff is involved in several activities. If you have maybe cost of some travel costs too, might not be related to only one activity. For example, if you are traveling for monitoring purposes, it's not relating to only one activity. Administration costs, if you have to include like office overheads, stationaries and all that, they are not tied to a specific activity. They cut across all the activities. So those things are overhead costs or operational costs. So these are 2 main components, and every cost must align. Every programmatic cost must align with activities in your work plan, right? So remember that, like we said, your sub-grant is also part of your budget. Don't forget to include it, otherwise you shoot yourself in the leg. So include sub-grant in your budget, because partnership is not optional under this core. Partnership is a must. So you must include that sub-grant that you disburse to your CBO partners. So all grantees must include sub-grants, and you should also be able to show how these funds will strengthen local partners and how you will monitor their use. Because why this is important is that when you disburse sub-grants, you as the lead organization is responsible to make sure that that money is spent well. GAVI is interested in the money they've given you, they can come after you for their money, but you should go after the person that you disburse money to as sub-grant. So it is your responsibility to make sure that proper documentations are made and all that, and also to see that the money, the sub-grant, is used for the purpose for which it was disbursed. So but in any case, sub-grant is essential here because partnership is not optional. GAVI actually gave priority to partnership because it ensures localization. Of course, you remember that localization is a cross-cutting issue under this course. So, and it is through sub-grant to community-based organization that we can achieve this localization or local ownership of the solution, right? And more importantly, it will also help for sustainability because, for example, if you're operating in a different location, even if it's in the same state or outside that particular state, that this project has a timeline. It will end someday, but the gains of the project should remain. And if people who are on the ground are part of the implementation, it means that even when the project ends, they can continue improving on the gains, and that is what we call localization or sustainability, right? So there is also one more financial rule that you need to know, and that is that your organization should have financial capacity, and you must be able to demonstrate it here, right? This is important for selection purpose. This is important. I can't overemphasize this. This is important for selection purpose. Your organization must have financial capacity. Now, let me just tell you plainly, the only way that GAVI will determine your financial capacity is through your audited account. Through your audited account. And the rule here is that there are different budgets for different states. Some states are allocated $600, some are allocated 400, some are allocated different amount. But it's not a must that you will request the full amount allocated, unless you are sure that your audited account will prove that you have a financial capacity to manage that amount. Now, how do you know the limit of your financial capacity? There are factors that you need to determine. Is the length of time, the project duration. Like I said, you must not exhaust the entire 21 months. So how long is your project going to last? That's one. And how long are you requesting? The rule is that your annual expenditure for the past 3 years, because you're submitting 3 years audited account. So the average annual expenditure indicated in your audited account in the past 3 years, average in the past 3 years, must be at least 50% of the amount that you propose annually in your grant request. I don't know whether this makes sense, but let me try to break it down. If you are requesting, for example, 600,000 naira, of course, that is if up to that amount is allocated for the particular state that you are working. You need to verify first. But I'm using this as an example. If you are requesting $600,000, not naira, sorry. If you are requesting $600,000 for, say, 18 months. 18 months should be 1.5 years, right? So you are requesting 600,000 naira for 18 months. It means that the average annually should be, let's assume that the average annually is around 400,000. I'm just assuming. I'm not a good mathematician until I use my calculator. right? So let's assume that when you divide it by 1.5, when you divide 600,000 by 1.5, let's just assume that what you have is 400,000. If it's a different figure, please confirm, but I'm just using it as an example. If what you have is 400,000 as your average cost per year, right, that you are requesting. Now, it means that your average expenditure in the past 3 years, as indicated in your audited account, your average expenditure in the past 3 years, as indicated in your audited account, must be at least 200,000 naira, which is 50% of the your average annual request. I don't know if this makes sense, but that is the rule, and it is a serious rule that they will use to determine your financial capacity, right? So one of the problems that some CSOs have is that they lack financial documentation. Some don't have, or some do not audit the account. They don't have audited accounts. But I want to tell you that these things are not really difficult. And even if you don't have audited account and you are serious that you meet all other qualifications and you want to do this, you can quickly get your accounts audited. There's nothing difficult about that, right? And if you are finding it challenging and you need assistance in doing this, you can send me a message, and I think it's important. Why it is important that you are not just doing it for this particular project, but you are doing it for your organization, because it is something that builds your organization's capacity. So even if you start now to do it, you are not just doing it for GAVI proposal, you are doing it for your organization, because you are setting a standard for your organization that can also help you to access further funding in the future. So if you've not been doing it, if you don't have audited account before now, I will encourage you to do something immediately, to start today, to have your accounts properly audited, and to make sure that at the end of every financial year, you have audited financial statements. So this will tell donors, and including GAVI, that you can handle funds. They don't want to risk their money. They don't want to just give. It's not a giveaway. They are giving it to you with a trust that you can handle them and that you can be accountable for them. So you don't blame them for requesting audited financial statements. So it also shows your financial responsibility too. Now that we've covered the numbers, I think the next thing should be to focus on how to tell your stories, your proposal narrative. That will be done in part 6, right? So for now, you've been able to turn your idea into a solid plan linked to budgets and real partnership with CBOs. So in part 6, we will focus on writing your proposal narratives, how well your story is clearly told and is also told in a persuasive form. So join me again in part 6. Let's explore this.